Welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we have something a little bit different. We have a 12 by 16 sheet of Arches watercolor paper. This is the 140 pound, and I believe it is the rough. It's definitely a rougher texture than my normal Stonehenge aqua paper. My friend recently helped me build a kind of a magazine rack to store all my papers, and I found a whole bunch of Arches paper that I had just squirreled away. I had originally started with Arches paper and moved on to this one mainly because moved on to the Stonehenge Aqua mainly just because of price point. I would say a large sheet, if you were to buy the sheet and then tear it apart, would be maybe $6 to $8 online, while other paper, the Stonehenge Aqua, is about $4. But if you paint a super lot, like in a crazy amount, it pays off in the long run to save that amount. However, this is for the fast and loose painting. So if you're a more meticulous painter, Arches might be the paper for you. They might hold up better. One of the things, and you might want to look into it, I think Arches might be the paper that is the only paper that still uses animal gelatin as a sizing agent, which I don't know the differences between the different sizing stuff, but I think that's like a point of like pride, like a good thing about that company is that they still use that, and they've been around for I think hundreds of years. Now, the Arches, I believe they are now owned by the company that does Ranson watercolor paper. So, and I used to use the Ranson as well, and that was good. And this is all just the 100% cotton paper. So you might want to look into them if you're looking at different types of papers and trying to decide what you want. There was a whole bunch of stuff online on Facebook and different forums recently. Oh, and by recently, I think maybe a few months ago, where people were having quality control issues with it. I don't know if Arches, I don't know if they addressed it. I think they addressed it in the standpoint of, people were emailing them and they were getting sent, fixed paper. And I think the quality control issue is that maybe the sizing wasn't applied thoroughly to the paper itself. But I don't think I ever had any issues with the Arches when I was using it. So that's just something to just keep in mind. It's not to be like fear-mongering or say that the brand is bad, because Arches is like one of the top of the line papers, and it's like people will literally just say it's the Cadillac of papers. So so check it out. If you have Hobby Lobby nearby, you can get the pads at Hobby Lobby, I believe. This, like I said, was a 16 by 12 pad. I think I got it off of blick.com. But I think maybe they have the 9 by 12 usually in stock at Hobby Lobby. Michael's, I've seen the block pad there. I've never bought block pads or anything like that, but they did have those there. Now, Michael's was priced quite highly, and you would have to use like a really good coupon for that to put it in a price range that's comparable to some of the online sources. So that's Michael's. And the block pads, what they are is they're attached. There's sheets that are laid on top of each other. I just put burnt sienna on my burnt upper spot, so I'm just using a card to lift it up and move it. Anyway, the block pads, it's stacked on top of each other and it's connected around the edge with tape. And I think that prevents the need to having to stretch the paper. So that might be something you may want to look into if you're having issues with paper buckling. And like I said, I think the cotton itself is just a really good go-to to prevent buckling to begin with. And what else? Oh yeah, also I guess having the pads themselves, you have the support underneath of the other pads. It's a pretty thick stack. And from there, you can use that to go out and about and paint, and it's probably easier portability wise. So if you're, delving into watercolors, which hopefully you are, or maybe just watching these videos because you enjoy watching people paint. I hear that quite a bit. But if you're delving into it, that's something you can look into. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I highly recommend 100% cotton paper, regardless of the brand. There's definitely differences in the brand, without a doubt, but at least get a paper like that. To just step back on my own words right there, I do have paper that's 100% alpha cellulose, which is the backing for paper, and you'll see some videos where I've experimented with that and I use that for the tinted aspect. But I do have stretching issues with those. So that's a good little primer discussion about paper to get our day started. I do have to keep in mind that since this one is 12 by 16, and I think I had bought this pad originally because I was able to cut it down in half and into quarters, into sizes that were traditional. But if I take this and lay it, it'll give me an idea of how much extra space I'm going to have that won't show through in the final painting. Vertically, not too much difference, but left to right, it comes in quite a bit. It comes into about here. And if I have that here, it goes in there. So it's almost, the mat's going to have like a large border. The reason I'm pointing that out is that I'm always talking about painting to the edges. And I'm still going to do that, but I'm going to keep in mind that my final product, my final picture is going to be within this imaginary line. So keep that in mind. All right, without further ado, if I didn't welcome you all, welcome again. Andrew Broussard Watercolors. I live stream these videos, so I usually do the prep work to give people a chance to come in, or for first-time watchers, for them to see it. You are more than welcome to skip ahead to when we start the painting. Usually, you just have to skip ahead like 3 minutes or something like that, but it's pretty easy. I do find, and now keep in mind, I haven't used arches in a while, and whenever I switch from one brand to another, or at least try paper from one brand to another, there is a learning curve. There's definitely something different taking place for me, and just the application of water alone, it's being applied differently. Usually I can get it down really quick. Here I've been having to kind of get more water on this large hake. Just to give you an idea, my friend had helped me build a little outdoor palette, not palette, a easel for watercolor painting, and it was difficult painting outside. It's definitely different. Reason being, temperature changings, lighting, just the angle that you're at, just little things really add up. So keep in mind, whenever you change anything in your painting, things will switch up on you. Anything in your process. So we got our medium-sized hake, and start off with a nice gentle raw sienna. Being that it's, like I said, I believe this sheet is the rough. Also, in the studio, which is just the the extra bedroom in the house, I'm working on lighting situation to help you all out and to help me out and to help things appear clearer on videos. So I removed the cover of the overhead light fixture, just like the room light fixture. And I think that gave me a little bit more light. I'm going to try to go to Lowe's today and see if I could switch out one of those two bulbs in the overhead light fixture to get something that'll be brighter. I also ordered another desk lamp. I have a desk lamp here and a desk lamp here. I ordered one that I think they said was 1,200 lumens. In the comments section, people are saying they really don't think it is actually that much lumens, the brightness, but it's better than nothing. And it also has temperature settings. I was talking to my buddy who is a fantastic tonalist oil painter, and he was showing his setup for lights, which I am unable to do in the house that we're renting. But he had told me that different lights have different temperatures to it. There's a in looking at lights and desk lamps, I'm gonna grab some ultramarine while I'm rattling. There's usually like a K after the number in regards to the temperature, the warmth of the light. And it's not like physical heat, it's more if the light is yellower or brighter in a bluish scale. And the temperature of your lighting can affect how it looks and how you paint compared to how it'll look in like a gallery setting or somebody else's house. And natural light, which was something that was a big proponent for painters to have a natural light source, was I think around 4,000 to 550 K. On the lighter side, if it was like 3,000 K, I think they used the unit Kelvin, I'm not sure. On the lighter side, it's like a a lower side, like 3,000 would be a warmer color. Would it be a warmer? No, I think it might be cool. It'd be yellower. It'd be a yellower aspect to it. And on a higher number, like 6,000, it's going to be like a bright blue, like a bright, brilliant light. And that could affect the color temperature of your painting, and a blue shift or a yellow shift in what you do, since you're painting under that light. So it was a pretty interesting lesson that I got from him. So I'm just doing a little bit of rambling. Let's grab a little bit of Payne's Gray, just a little bit of alizarin crimson. I'll allow myself to put a little bit of clouds. Okay. Now we'll continue with our theme of. Actually, let's switch it up. Let's do our light red oxide. I didn't clean the brush at all, but light red oxide, ultramarine. This is a good go-to distant purple. Kind of just a receding into the picture plane aerial perspective. Too much ultramarine. Remember, the image is going to start underneath the mat here, but I'm going to go to the edge. I'm going to put a varied background tree line, and then I'm going to lay over this with probably the raw sienna. This will be a little interesting if we take, see the lifting aspect, just a little bit of highlights from this sun or moon. Haven't really determined what it is yet. But regardless, we got a far distant. Let's get variation in this line instead of doing a straight line up and down. Let's move over to raw sienna, muted down with ultramarine. Put another layer for variation in this background. Remember, this whole side is going to be missing off by the mat. Let's feed some, try to grab that burnt umber, burnt sienna I put down in my burnt umber spot. Mix that with ultramarine for even more variety. The arches doesn't seem to buckle as much, and you saw how much I saturated it, and you see how I deal with that with the Stonehenge Aqua, and how I struggled with that with the Bockingford paper. Just let myself slowly build this up. Just working my way forward, trying to come up with a compositional idea. I genuinely don't have anything in mind. I was thinking about maybe putting a barn in, some Payne's Gray. Now, as this line gets closer, I'll be able to see more between these structures, the foliage, the trees. We'll do some scraping with this one so you guys can see how arches scrapes. Just come up with an idea how I want this foreground to look. Whether this is a path or what, I'm not quite sure yet. Anyway, said I would show you some scraping, so let me find a good card for that. Let's see, what do we want to grab? Let's put a barn structure right here, and then we'll put its reflection here. Let's see. Okay, so if I make this water's edge, I'm going to have my reflections. And y'all probably know at this point that I like to do the reflections wet and wet, and sometimes I do reflections even before I put the actual image that's being reflected in. But we seem to have a consistent moisture content, which is good. Ultramarine blue coming through right there, but I'm okay with it. Let's put the barn or a house or a camp right in here. So I'm just building up the pigment so I can get a good scrape. Now, this is one scrape that I struggle with because I always try to go back over the scrape with another one, so it messes me up. But I'm going to give myself a peek here. And then I'm going to pull down. Okay, so that did allow a nice natural edge. You see how the pigment's trying to backfill? That's what I talk about whenever we do those thin lines, how easy it is for those to try to fill up. Let's do a little side structure right here. And I'm really digging into that paper, but the arches can definitely handle it. And then I'm going to bring down a light from the reflection, light from the reflection. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just kind of gives me that idea there. I'm going to let that barn hang out for a bit while we build up our tree structures. Once again, everything's still wet and wet. I'm using the standard Ranson palette right now, which I use it more on the earth tone spectrum, a more muted tonalist approach. Payne's gray, burnt umber. It's looking for a dark. We're going to wind up having some interesting trees. In fact, I might have quite a dark tree here. a large one. Everything's wet and wet, so it'll soften. And with the Payne's gray and all that, it'll lighten up, and then we can build up values within that in a bit. Let's look at our other side. I want to vary the height of the trees. I don't want the exact same thing coming across. I could do this. I've never really done this before, where I take a light source and scrape out the ripples on the water from it, like directly just going vertically down. But that is a viable method right there, just to get a simple reflection. I feel like I'm a little offset to the right. I personally, that's something that I know that I struggle with things lining up in that fashion, or things starting to tilt. And as you paint, you'll identify things that you personally have issues with. You know, if you start pushing things more towards mud, or I don't mix my ultramarine well, and I know that sometimes I have pure ultramarine come out of the brush, and I'm not personally a fan of that. But that's part of growing, identifying what your weaknesses are. Just think, like, what's that stereotypical job interview question? What's your strengths? What your weaknesses? And you just know that. I'm going to bring this around here. I think this landmass. Raw sienna, ultramarine blue. This backfilled, I'm going to script it again. So you see how it's trying to move up into it. So if you want, you can do a little lifting, a little swiping. Okay, now I'm going to build up my darks. Payne's gray and raw sienna could give me a little bit of a green. Let me grab some lemon yellow in there. Once I start using lemon yellow, it gets contaminated so quickly. But all you'd have to do is just take the paper towel and wipe off on top of it. Okay, so now we're on a greener side of things. Building up kind of the inside density of this mass. I could bring that down. More Payne's gray into it, get a darker variety. Even if it's dark, have a tree behind that. Darker mask coming over. I'll just let the shadows come in and kind of subtly build that. So far we only used the hake and a card. We didn't even use the rigger, which we could use if we wanted to. Everything's kind of fairly muted. Let's grab a little bit of the rigger. I'm gonna get a light wash. I could create a little bit of structure back here. This will just help kind of tie that horizon together. I could also put in the idea of light trees back here and just play around with that distance. We could have done it earlier, or you could come in after the fact. Same thing with mountains and things like that. You don't have to put those distant mountains in right away. I'm just taking darker pigment. We're still wet and wet, no dry offs whatsoever. Put a little bush outcropping in front. Hear a squirrel noise, that's weird. But it has been raining the past few days, so we may have some animals hiding at the house. I don't want to lose the barn by making it too dark, the house by making it too dark, but we'll figure it out in a moment once we'll probably dry off and then do that wash. Let's grab a dark Payne's Gray, burnt umber. Try to get a greener dark. I have the sap green on the palette, but I'm trying to minimize what I use to just the Ron Ranson palette for anybody that's following along. By the way, if you're following along, I'd love to see your results. I have a whole bunch of social media linked down below. I also have the Patreon account and other things linked down below, so I would love for you to consider supporting me. All that money goes back into supplies, and the tiers are super cheap. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so if you want to follow along, and if somebody offers and says, hey, I want to buy that from you, go ahead. You have my permission to sell anything that you paint whenever you're following along with one of these tutorials. I want you guys to succeed and grow. And we all know how expensive art supplies are. I think I had started off talking about the price of the paper, right, for this one. I'm trying to get tonal varieties in these darks. I think we might call this one a Nocturne. Let me see if it's worth doing any scraping of. It's like light scrapes. Let me do a dry off now. So if you have earbuds on, just watch out. I had a light mix. I think it was from the light red oxide with a little bit of the ultramarine. So I'll just put a little bit on this house just to pull it away from being stark white. That just darkens it a little bit. We could take our dark mixture now and just play around right alongside it. Get a little variation in darks. Blend in. Little texture variety in that foreground. Everything's still very tonally similar. Dry brushing just to push this in a little bit more. If you want. Oh. Let's see. Let me do another dry off real quick. I do find whenever I use arches, I get very dark and kind of muddy-ish, and you guys know I like to paint dark to begin with, but I'm not sure what I do differently with the arches, but I get even darker effects. Then, if you want to bring up those reflections more, you can wet that area and lift. Try to wet and lift, and you can kind of just go back and forth. You could also take the magic eraser to lift that area up. Remember, magic erasers are melanin foam, and you can get that in super cheap quantities off of Amazon. Melanin, M-E-L-A-N-I-N-E, I believe. Just a few little branches. Okay, so that's about it. Let's take off the clips, and I'll put the mat on top, and you'll see how much the mat will come in on the 12 by 16 sheet. So this is one of the pads that they sell from Arches, which, like I said, I believe I got it originally so I could cut it wham, wham, and I would have my 5 by 7s, I believe. Okay, so you see it cuts it in quite a bit. It does give you leeway if you want to shift the object, the image, but we'll leave it. Let's see, I'll just show you there. If I bring it to the one edge, and then we can shift it here to the other edge, so whatever way you prefer. Anywho, hope you enjoyed. Once again, please like, subscribe, follow. If you have any questions, please comment down below, and I will be back soon with more videos for y'all. Have a great day. Bye.